All right, good morning. It's 9 a.m. Thank you for coming today. We will call the special meeting to order of December 6th, 2016. Just read the statement. It says, welcome, citizens of Clay County. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to attend this school board special meeting. The meeting is our opportunity as your elected representatives to collaborate openly and make decisions that will decide the future direction of our public schools and education of our children here in Clay County. If you wish to address the board, there will be an opportunity to speak for 3 minutes. Please fill out a card, which you will find located somewhere.
Okay.
And indicate the specific item. There's only one item to speak on and turn it in. Your participation is welcomed and appreciated. So thank you for coming this morning. The reason that I called this special meeting at our November 22nd school board meeting was for one item to address, one reason. On our agenda, it says status of ESC. That's listed incorrectly. We're here today to just discuss whether or not this board would like to ask the Office of Inspector General to do an independent investigation into the ESC claims that were brought forth by Dr. Susan Saylor. So that's the only topic we'll be addressing, and we will, I'll have the opportunity to speak on it. Since I requested it, I think, if you don't mind, I'll just go first. Is that okay with everybody? All right. Mrs. Bola, I saw that Ms. Condon forwarded those documents to you. Thank you for doing that. And actually, I think all of us probably reread them. So we received a claim from Dr. Susan Saylor, and in it there were allegations that, I think everybody read it, we all know, allegations that some of our administrators were coding students incorrectly into ESE. This was affecting our graduation rate and I guess the federal funds that we received. She said that she brought it to the superintendent's attention on several times and he did not address it. Dr. Susan Saylor reported her complaint to us, but also to the Office of Inspector General. So this, I feel, was handled incorrectly. The letter that we received from the Office of Inspector General states that if the school board is unwilling or unable to address this, that we need to notify them and they will do an independent investigation. Mr. Sykes had, or actually Ms. McKinnon, our former chairman, took it upon herself to act solely, independently, and address this and gave it to the superintendent without bringing it to the board. We are the governing body of the Clay County School Board, and collectively we as a board should have decided what to do with this. She gave it to the superintendent and instructed him to investigate. He sent it to HR, and right there I find our first problem because our director or assistant superintendent for HR is named in the complaint. So I don't feel that was handled appropriately. He forwarded it to our school board attorney, and it does say, our school board attorney has quoted policy to us, it does say in our policy that anti-fraud can be reported to the Office of Inspector General or the school board attorney. So he's absolutely right when he says that it can be reported to him. However, this individual employee chose not to report it to him. She reported it to the Office of Inspector General. So right there lies another problem as far as I'm concerned. I printed up our policies. I know it's been quoted to us by our school board attorney in the past. Policy 2.35D is what Mr. Sykes has referenced, and it does say in policy 2.5D, all employees of the district have an affirmative obligation to report fraud to their supervisors or, if the circumstance warrants, directly to the superintendent of schools. If the observed or suspected fraud or fraudulent activity involved a school board member or the superintendent, the report should be made to the school board's attorney or the state of Florida's chief inspector general. It then goes on to say any employee who reports a fraud in good faith shall not be subject to recriminations, or having made the report, whistleblower protection may apply, and it continues on. This is what's been quoted to us for the last couple of months since we've been dealing with this, and it is accurate. It can go to the school board attorney. However, this, like I said, this employee brought it to the Office of Inspector General. In this case, they chose to report it to the state's OIG because she obviously did not trust the school board attorney or feel comfortable with them. And since the report to the OIG, it triggers us then to go to statute 1001.2, which legally makes the school board responsible for investigating. Our internal policy does not supersede state law. The second policy that Mr. Sykes has quoted to us is 2.17A4, and that talks about investigations. And investigations, I'll read it, it says, investigations of complaints against employees shall be the responsibility of the superintendent of schools. Such investigations shall be coordinated by Human Resource Division. Well, it can't be the responsibility of the superintendent when the claimant is accusing him of something. And it can't go to our Division of Human Resources since our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources is also named in it. So, all investigations of employees shall be conducted by HR, but not the board attorney, even if it's reported to him under 2.35 fraud policy. In this case, HR is named in the complaint, so it should have been sent to the state immediately to preserve the integrity. So I guess what I'm really asking the board, and what I'm extremely uncomfortable about, is how this has all been handled. Because I feel like it gives the impression that there's a cover-up taking place and that if we sit by and do nothing, we're in agreement with it. So I'd like to ask the board to ask the Office of Inspector General to do an independent investigation. Regardless of what this investigation that's been conducted shows, I just don't feel that it's been accurate. I myself have had people come before us or before me, call me up and tell me that they haven't been interviewed, they have information to share, that there's truth in what's been reported, and others have been afraid to tell the truth. So I'm very concerned about this, and that's why I brought it to our attention today. I just realized I should have done the card first. I'm sorry. Do I stop at this point and allow speakers? Why don't I do that? All right. Ms. Tracy Butler, I apologize for getting right into this without giving you 3 minutes first.
Okay, I don't know that would come before the discussion, but I did want to point out a couple of things because I did represent one of our folks who went in for the investigation, or to be interviewed for the investigation, and I will say that it was just that, it was an interview. At no time were those folks sworn in, they weren't told this was a deposition, so I was there. The process included a printout of questions, and the questions were the same for each person that came in. The two folks that were doing the investigation, one of them, the lady introduced herself as being a former superintendent of schools. Again, at that point, I thought to myself, you know, that just does not smell good. It didn't pass the sniff test for me. So we went through the process, and our member had me there just because she wanted to feel secure and make sure that she didn't have any responsibility or anything come back on her later. I will tell you though that Susan did come to, Dr. Sadler did come to us because she is a member of the union when this all took place. And we did talk about the fact that it needed to go to the OIG. She did talk about that she was concerned about the district doing their own investigation. In that time frame, we had numerous folks call us and tell us that they had information about this, that they wanted to speak, and we made recommendations as a union to say, why don't we put something out there, some sort of hotline, some sort of way for our folks to be able to feel like they can let someone know, and if that is worthy of any type of investigation, whatever they should report, then whoever is doing such will go down that route. If they feel it is not, then they won't. That never happened, so the door was never open for people to come forward. The lady that was doing the investigation told me that she had been given a list of names and that those were the people that would be coming in. I asked about two people that I knew had come to me that did give me the permission to use their name, and she said that neither of those were on her list, so she then added them to her list, and to my knowledge, I believe they were spoken to. At least that's what they told me. And then I will also say that I was told since the investigation that a certain administrator had met with her folks and prepped them on how to answer, actually specifically told them, do not give extra information and do not give other names. I was told that Again, folks complained to me saying there was never an invitation to others who weren't on the list to come forward and speak about their knowledge. And one witness has stated to me that she did give firsthand knowledge of facts that she had about an incident. So there was no backup on this agenda, so I don't know if that, if the report reflects that. Also too, I wanted to ask if any data was pulled. Is that my 1 minute mark or 3 minutes?
That's 3 minutes.
Oh my, okay. Can I finish my thoughts?
Yeah, just finish that
Okay.
one little thought. What
No,
else were you asking?
I wanted to know if there was any data pulled, because I think that some of the allegations could have also been either negated or substantiated through data. Looking at whether or not students, if there was an influx in students with these types of things, so I'd like to know also if there was data pulled.
All right, thank you. Well, and that's what Ms. Butler said, some of what I've heard. I've heard that there is a code of silence out there. I've heard that there's been some meetings after hours. It sounds like a great conspiracy going on, but with all the phone calls that I've gotten about it, it just concerns me that we need to clear the good name of Clay County, of this school district. And if there's nothing there, fine. But we need to have an independent investigation done from somebody outside our district who has no ties to our district, that the team is not chosen by someone within our district. You know, the Inspector General's office will come out. It won't cost us anything to have them come out and do an independent investigation.
May I say something quick?
Yes.
First and foremost, the Inspector General is going to want to see what report has already been reflected and done.
And that's fine.
And since that has been completed, a better course of action that I would recommend to you is, if you think that there is something that is short-sighted or missing from the report, I would submit that the superintendent sends to the Inspector General the report that's been done, and then if you want to list separately, as the chairman of the board, concerns and shortcomings that you have, and invite them to further investigate it, you can have your cake and eat it too. The bottom line of it is if you reject the report, which I haven't seen it, but I've been advised by Mr. Davis that there's no finding of probable cause. If you reject the report and say, we want you to come in and do something entirely separate and don't pay attention to this, it's not going to look objective, it's going to look subjective, and that what you're looking for is a result, not the truth. So if you have problems with the report, then I would recommend have the superintendent send the letter to the Inspector General saying, here's the copy of the report, and then you, as the chairman of the board or any other member of the board, can send a letter to the Inspector General saying, these are the concerns that I have. I invite you to do further inquiry if you so choose. Because at all times through this, the Inspector General is the one that has the jurisdiction on it. They've never lost jurisdiction. They asked us to look into it. And it's been looked into, and I take umbrage on some of the statements of the order of how this occurred. Dave Broski did not give me the thing and then to task me to do anything. When the information came to me, having looked at 2.35, having gone and looked at the overall thing, I made the statement, 2 people have jurisdiction over this, the Inspector General's office or myself. They've already assumed jurisdiction. They sent it back to me. That's my view of the rule under 2.35. I knew one of the problems that you have with this case is it goes back to 2014 when the ESE allegations are made. During that time frame, there's predecessor counsel was the attorney at the time. I'm on it. We've been actively participating with the ESE. So there's no way that the attorneys should have actually individually done it. So we saw a way forward. We asked FADS to do it, and I basically was not directed by either the superintendent or by the chairman of the board. I advised this route. This is the proper route. I advise that we go to FADS. One other thing I'd like to say about the FADS investigation. Mr. Van Zant's gone now. So there is no hierarchy that's leveraging down on people to not answer questions. I don't know where that's coming from. If, however, you think that people have not had the opportunity to be honest and forthright and forthcoming, then I would note that in the letter to the inspector, whatever concerns you have. But I think you need to specify time, dates, and places. Because it's easy to say, well, I heard this and I heard that. Well, if you think somebody specifically hasn't had their statement made, specify who wasn't heard. Specify the date, time, place, and specify the fact that they weren't given the opportunity to participate in this investigation. Lastly, during an investigation, you don't always swear people in. As a matter of fact, very rarely during investigation, do you swear somebody in while you're taking. That is a choice of the investigator. It is not necessarily required. Investigators, every time they talk to a witness, they don't always swear them in. I'm going in the Army. I'm going off on January. I'm going to act as a judge on the case. We have an administrative investigation, and in that investigation, hardly anybody has given a sworn statement. It's not how that works in an administrative investigation. So the fact that people weren't sworn in does not, by definition, mean that the investigation wasn't done properly. So in summary, my recommendation is you forward the results because they're going to want for it anyhow. And if you don't forward it to them, they're going to say you're trying to hide the ball. Forward the results to them and allow any member of the board or anybody else to write a letter to the inspector saying what you think the shortcomings are. But if you're going to allege shortcomings, be specific, because I can always say, all right, I heard this person or that person didn't do this. That tells them nothing. Give them time, dates, and specifics. And if you think somebody hasn't been heard, then make sure that you tell the IG's office. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you. And I do agree with Mr. Sykes that we do have to forward the report, which, by the way, came in on Friday. Mrs. Bush is making a copy for everyone, and it should be delivered today or tomorrow? Probably tomorrow. So everybody will see it. I agree with your comments. Thank you. We will forward it, absolutely. And a letter from us stating, what we think should definitely accompany it.
Well, what I would recommend on that is I'm going to write a letter because I'm the one that's been the point of contact saying, and I've already shared it with Mr. Brodsky, saying here's the results of the investigation, forward for review. You take the further steps. As a matter of fact, I think I got a copy of that. But I'll distribute it. But basically, here's the investigation. We leave it to you to review and make any further decision that you want to go forward with it.
And before you send that, you'll copy that to all the board members.
Yeah. In fact, I was going to basically give it to Mr. Davis to review, and then don't know what I do with it, but I'll
That's
find
right.
it.
You don't have to have it.
But
this moment.
the point of it is that you got to be careful about trying. There's a difference between objective and subjective. Objective is here's the investigation. It says what it says. Subjective is I don't like it because it doesn't find the result that I want. I want a different result.
But that's not why I'm questioning it. I'm really questioning the fact that I feel like there's a lot of people who have not been interviewed who, I don't know who put together the list, but weren't on the list. So that's what really concerns me, as Mrs. Butler just said.
Can I ask questions?
Yes.
You received the final report on Friday.
Yes, ma'am.
In the report, did they talk about how many people they did interview?
Absolutely. They have identified by names. They
Do you
have.
know approximately how many people they interviewed?
I do not. I mean,
Okay.
they identified administrators and I also believe additional staff as well.
And I'm
And it gives
assuming,
them a follow-up of their conversation or dialogue, a short excerpt of it.
and I'm assuming that they went to the schools that were most in doubt, shall we say, whatever the word that you want to use for
That is my
that.
understanding.
And the most criticism, under the most whatever. And they came up with the basic fact that there was no wrongdoing,
They came up, it was unfounded.
unfounded.
Unfounded through the allegations of made that Clay County has been miscoding and misrepresenting students who are identified as ESE and placing them in order to spike graduation rates.
I think when you'll read the report, it'll be interesting when we take care of everyone's opinions of it. It seemed like every one of the administrators gave the exact same statement, almost to the point where the wording was identical.
Who made the list of names that they
I don't know. I know the administrator names are everybody that in Dr. Saylor's report
But-
around the table,
but
but I don't
wait,
remember the rest.
Who, was it Mr. Sykes, did you make up the list of names?
No, ma'am. What I did was we gave them.
Did you?
No, ma'am.
Well, where did they get the
The
names?
investigators.
The investigators determined that.
Did it include
They may-
ESE teachers as well as administrators?
Basically, so that there would be no, there was no interference by the administration. It's here's the allegations, here's the thing, follow it up and find what you think is appropriate. Nobody said, only talk to this person or talk to that person. It was, we gave them the allegations independently. I deal with investigations all the time.
Yeah, I'm
And-
just curious as to who the body of people were that that 15 people that they interviewed.
Yes,
I mean, if five of them were principals, just using that as an example, and 5 of them were BRTs or whatever, you're dealing with just a few teachers then, and where in the administration, were they guidance counselors, were they BRTs, were they ESE people, were they teachers, were they, who were these people?
The investigators,
Wait to find out.
the investigators were subject matter experts. They were former school board attorneys, HR people. They understand the mechanics and the workings in and
Right,
out of
those are
it.
the interviewers.
Those are interviewers.
But I'm saying the people that were interviewed, yeah.
They were left to turn over whatever stone they thought was
I
appropriate.
got it, okay.
And so, one of the problems that you get into is if you try to direct an investigator, go talk to this person, go talk to that person, then you're not allowing the investigator to figure out the truth on them, you're trying to direct the result. And so, then the flip side of this is that if you think somebody was purposefully let out, then that's what you would do to you'd tell the IG, it's like, well, we think the inspector, the investigator didn't talk to these people for one reason or another. And then what's going to happen if the investigator thinks, when they look at it, and if they think there's something to it, they'll further investigate it. If they don't think there's anything to it, they'll accept the results. But the IG, even without that, okay, the IG can accept or reject
Sure.
the
Oh,
investigation
absolutely.
as they see fit.
Absolutely. I guess I'm still talking about or questioning the, for want of a better word, the allegations that some of the teachers were coached by their principals. So if the investigator came in and told the principal, I want to interview the following 5 people on Wednesday, just using that as an example, obviously the principal's going to go to those 5 people, say, you're going to be investigated and you're going to be talking to this investigator and watch what you say or whatever. I mean, I can't say that in a general statement. But if that's the case, then I can see where we might want to bring forward other names.
Sure.
And you're talking specifics, if we know of specifics. These people did not get any information brought forward. And if that, and I guess my concern is if that group of people is really different, uniquely different from the group of people that were talked to or that were interviewed, that would then give a different perspective
But
perhaps.
if I may follow up on one other thing. If in fact there are witnesses that were tampered with, that were threatened, coerced, okay, that's criminal, okay? And so if in fact somebody has evidence to suggest or believe that something criminal has happened, then I fully recommend that they take it to the Clay County Sheriff's Office because they have the jurisdiction independent of the IG and everybody else.
That evidence would have to be a tape.
Well,
Yeah,
right,
I
and
mean,
the
it's-
thing about it is then they're gonna have to, because if anybody, and I will tell you right now, this is the first that I've heard that somebody was specifically tampered with. If somebody came up to me and said, Mr. Sykes, I was threatened, I was coerced, I was told to do this, do that, do the other, my response is go to the Clay County Sheriff's Office and file a report right now.
And you don't need a tape to prove, I mean, if you have, because
I
it wouldn't be just
understand.
one person.
I'm
it would be
speaking from a
multiple.
teacher perspective, when a principal comes to you and says, hey, you're going to be talking to someone.
Well, I
And
encourage,
I'm sitting back going, I'm an annual contract teacher, or, I better say what I need to say, or my contract won't be.
but I encourage right now.
There's a lot, there's fear out there.
If there's a specific incident where somebody was coached or told not what to do, I encourage them to go file a complaint with the Sheriff's Office. That's a crime.
To answer your question, Ms. Bola, sorry, 7 principals were interviewed, the superintendent was interviewed, 1 ESE director was interviewed, the assistant superintendent of HR was interviewed, 5 school staffing specialists were interviewed, 1 ESE secretary, 1 ESE teacher, 3 assistant principals, 1 behavior management specialist, 1 director of professional development, and 1 former principal was interviewed as well.
We had a comment from Mr. Brosley.
I was just stated to Ms. Bola's concerns, typical, which I don't know how this report's written, but you would outline how you did it.
Mhm.
You would say, this is what I did, and you'd give a chronology of
Right, right.
why you did it. So I'm sure the report will tell
But
you
going back
why they
to,
went back to.
they're not gonna do it.
So
I mean, a
let's-
teacher, a good teacher has
No, I
a
mean,
professional contract.
however they
like that.
investigated it will be in the report.
Oh,
They'll
I see. I'm sorry. I'm
They'll
sorry.
explain their logic as to how they did it and why.
Let's
Right.
have board discussion now.
Okay. You know, people have said to me, why don't you just let it go? It's a black mark on the face of the Clay County School District. We've got this, I have not seen this report that you're talking about, so I have no idea what it says. That would be easy to just say, well, we got the report. For what y'all are saying, they didn't really find anything, so let's just go on. That would be a perfect world. We could go on and get back to talking about educating our kids and doing our job. But this is my gut feeling on this. There's something not right here, and I don't know exactly what it is. I have had people call me and tell me about people standing over their shoulder to do things on the computer. I have heard about intimidation of employees who were fearful for their jobs, as you said, annual contract people. And the truth of the matter is, I mean, Mr. Davis is always talking about transparency. I think transparency is of utmost importance in this issue to get it settled once and for all. This letter that goes, of course, this report should be sent to the Inspector General, but I think not separately from a letter from this board or whoever on this board wants to participate, and I certainly would participate in this. I think along with this letter in the same envelope at the same time should be the response from the board. We obviously can't go out and do an in-depth investigation, but we could provide some names of some key people who might offer additional information that hasn't come forth. The intimidation factor is what I'm concerned about here. I think that there are people who have been very afraid to speak for fear of their jobs, and I think it's time to clean this deck, let the chips fall where they're made, and then go on and do our job. But we can't have this, you said code of silence. I mean, this sounds,
That's what someone called yesterday.
this just is not a good thing, but I just want the truth, whatever the truth is. And then we'll deal with the truth. But it troubles me I feel in my heart of hearts that there are employees who are knowledgeable of things that they have been reluctant to come forward. And, you know, I don't know who was interviewed. I've got a list of names. I have no idea. I've been sitting and waiting just like all the rest of us. But I think that we can't just turn our head and say, well, we've got this report and that's it and it's done with. We've got a disadvantage because we hadn't even read the report, but and really it doesn't matter to me what's in the report or not. I don't think that the entire truth has come out yet, and it troubles me. I think we have to be transparent on this for the good name of this school district. I think there are people who maybe feel that they have been accused of things that they have not done, and I hate that. And I think that there are employees who are fearful that they did what they were directed to do, and they're fearful for their jobs. But I don't think that it should interfere with their jobs. If they do what their boss tells them to do, you know, that certainly would come into play. It puts everybody in an awkward position. But as a board member, we have to look out for the best interest of the school district. I don't think we can just close the book and say, well, that's that. We must at least try to get the facts of the matter out so that we can prevent anything like this from ever taking place again, if it in fact was taking place. We've just got to clean it off, and start over. I think under Mr. Davis's leadership that I don't think we're gonna have to worry about things like this.
Ms. Gilhousen, did you want to comment?
I guess what I'm not understanding is if we ask the Inspector General's office to investigate this again, what is it that you think will be different this time? As far as employees' willingness to come forward and speak, you think that'll be different this time than it was with this previous investigation, and why? What would make it different?
I think the fact that the intimidation has been removed, people will feel more free to speak now.
What intimidation?
Well, as Ms. Bola stated, there is intimidation in the teachers.
I mean, how can you say it's been removed if we haven't identified what the intimidation is?
I think prior to this last election, people were afraid to speak up for fearful of losing their jobs.
Okay.
Now, it's kind of a new day, and I think people, I mean, I since the election, I've gotten more phone calls. Just this last few days, I've gotten, this code of silence. Someone called me yesterday and said, you'd be shocked if you knew what's going on after hours and the meetings that have taken place to script what everybody said. Or
Meetings that the previous superintendent was holding specifically, is that what we're talking about?
No,
Because principals
his
haven't
name was,
changed.
his name was not part of the meetings. But it was, and I'm not gonna name the person who said it, I'm gonna let that person come forward on their own when this investigation is done. But I agree, the report has to be sent. When I think what Mr. Sykes said completely, that there should be an accompanying letter, as Mrs. Studdard said, with it, from this board, that we would request additional interviews and additional information before they make a ruling, before the Office of Inspector General and the Commissioner of Education has a final findings on that.
I mean, to me, that sounds like we're trying to direct the investigation. That's what it sounds like to
No,
me.
we're
When you're-
asking
when
for
you're
an-
referring specific people to be interviewed, or, I don't know, I feel like, the fear factor, I mean, I've been in a very litigious industry. I know what depositions are all about and how intimidating they are. Truthfully, it doesn't matter who your boss is. Most people leave a deposition in tears because it's very intimidating and you question everything that you've ever done in your career. So, I guess for me personally, I don't see the fear factor being removed by having another investigation.
Keep in mind, these weren't depositions that took place.
Right, but
As
they're
Mr. Sykes said,
interviews.
they weren't sworn in,
Right.
they were just, as Ms. Butler said, a casual conversation.
But if somebody's questioning you about your processes and procedures and what you've done as a professional, that's intimidating,
I think
regardless of who's asking
the
the
point that you
question.
just made about directing the investigation by giving specific names,
Mhm.
I feel like that's what's been done. It's been directed to only specific people giving their interview.
Mhm.
And the ones that,
But what
Mrs.
they
Saylor
just
or
said
others
is that it
said.
wasn't directed, that the Office of Inspector General selected their group of people to.
not the Office of
No.
Inspector.
They
I'm
didn't
sorry,
know who
I'm
they
sorry,
were.
the
Fads. Fads investigators.
their investigators
But
selected.
we had to give her the names of the people to talk to. They didn't, the Inspector General's office didn't know who to talk to over here.
Right,
They were given the names of who to talk to.
well, but they may have asked for, I need this many teachers, I need this many administrators, you know what I mean?
That's
Not
not
like
correct.
that.
They were,
No,
they were given basic contact information, here's the allegations, given basic contact information, and allowed free reign to go and interview whoever they wanted. They were not given a list and say, this is, I disagree with that. That's not how the investigation works at all. It's, they were given contact information, they were given the allegations, and they were given free reign to follow it whatever way they want. They were not given a list saying, only talk to these people. Didn't happen.
Well, to me, this was an independent third-party investigation. To me, it's as fair as going to be. These investigations aren't simple, they're very complicated, and regardless, like I said, there's a fear factor, there's an intimidation factor to sitting in a room and being questioned. So I tend to think that what the report we received is acceptable. I don't see flaws and worthy of asking for a second investigation. But if that's what the majority of the board wants to do, then.
Ms. Condon, did you want to comment?
Yeah, so I think, well, I have a few thoughts. One, is, I think that regardless of what has gone on in the past, we do have Mr. Davis's leadership now. I know from just watching TV that he has experience dealing with ESE problems in a district on his resume, and has fixed those under his watch. So I think that going forward, we are going to be much better regardless, because he has that experience that he can bring from another district to put into our district. So, and processes will change, no matter what the findings of this would be. Having just sat through our annual required ethics training on Friday of last week, listening to the gentleman who came and spoke from the FBI, it ran through my mind. It's just unbelievable in today's world with social media and so everything we do is on video and that kind of thing, that anyone would do any kind of attempt, any kind of corruption or intimidation or things. But the fact of the matter is, because of the way that gentleman described not only his job, but his whole unit he leads, it clearly goes on in our country, and that's disturbing to me. I do think we do need to move on as a district and move forward. I think that we're in the business of educating children, and that's where we want to focus our time and efforts and money. So I would agree with you on that. But it is, I would be okay with Mr. Sykes' recommendation of sending this report with a letter that says that we believe these people inadvertently were left out of the investigation. I mean, we don't know intentionally that they were left out, but that we believe these people could have lent additional information, and let the Inspector General's office make the decision of where to go further from that, whether he or the staff should investigate that further, or if they're going to accept it. I do want to be careful as a district that we respect the two former superintendents and school board attorneys. I think even one of them used to work for DOE. I do want to respect the professionalism of them to regardless of the backstory that you told about how this all came about. I do think they're very reputable individuals, and their resumes stand for themselves, and I don't feel like they were just, a single shingle, stuck it out, said I'm an investigator, hire me. I think they come with very good qualifications, and I do want to be careful as a district that we don't diminish the work that they did, and that we paid for with tax dollars. And I don't know how much that was, so those are my comments.
Mrs. Bullitt, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I feel like I'm going to be somewhat cynical.
That's why you're here.
And yes, I agree wholeheartedly with you as to sending the report forward, including a letter indicating that there may be additional information that we'd like to garner from this. My gut reaction is we're not going to get anything from this. And with that in mind, then there's always the feeling, well, do we need to do this? But yes, we should go for it. I mean, we have to provide the report anyway. And it doesn't hurt to provide a letter saying there are other people involved with this that we'd like to talk, that you may want to garner further information from. With that in mind, however, considering who they've already spoken with and where the allegations came from the principals, the decisions from what my gathering of all of this and remembering the discussions previously was that the principals were making these decisions, and perhaps some of the other, for want of a better word, management of the school or management of the data within that school. I'm going to leave this just with ESE. It doesn't stop with ESE, unfortunately, at times, with grades or whatever. But if there's a need from the Inspector General's office to speak with additional personnel besides the principals, then they will pursue that if they feel the need. But with the allegation, I think that most of the people have been talked with already.
So, do I have a motion for, I guess, me as the chairman to draft a letter, which I will send to all of you, to review
If-
first.
If you do that, then you're gonna violate the sunshine law. You can't have a letter that runs between the five of you trying to figure this out. It has to be done in sunshine. What I would recommend that you do is you do the motion that you authorize the superintendent or ask the superintendent to forward the results of the investigation. And then each member of the board has the ability to individually,
No.
if you're going to draft a letter, I think you're gonna have problems internally doing the letter with, and violating sunshine, and have you guys communicating about this. This is public business.
The original letter that came to the board chair asked the board chairman to respond. The chairman of the board speaks on behalf of the board as a collective body when we have made a decision collaboratively together.
Then I would
So,
recommend
the letter
then that
has
you
come.
draft your letter and you put it up for the next board meeting and have them vote on it publicly, because you can't have this internal communication outside of the sunshine.
So could we do that next week? I mean, it's obvious, our meeting is next week. The agenda will be finalized today. So could we go ahead and add that as an agenda item? You could bring a draft to that board meeting. Just like when we had done some policy review a couple of years ago, we had, basically put it up on the board and edited at that time if anybody had any changes.
A letter from the chairman should not have, we shouldn't be putting it up and wordsmithing it like that. It should just be what we decided as a collective body. I should then draft it on with your, what we've decided today.
When's that meeting, is it next?
On the 15th.
And if
It's
I,
not gonna hurt anything, to bring the letter to the board.
We can do that if we really
We've
feel
all
strongly.
said draft a letter, or four of us have given the
All
go
right.
ahead to draft a letter.
By
It's not
then-
gonna hurt a thing to wait till next week, bring it to the board, then everything's clean.
All right.
Transparent,
By
that's what
then,
I'm
we will
going
have
for.
been able to review. You
Yeah,
have,
we
you
have-
have,
let's-
you have knowledge
but
we
let's
don't have
remember-
at this point.
Well,
Let's remember
let-
that the conversation here today is not really the content of the report that was done.
It's that it
It's,
needs to
was
go
the
further.
report done unbiased and independently like it should have been? Because this, from day one, should have come to the board, and it never came to us as a collective body. We were not able to do our due diligence as elected officials. It should have come to us, and we should have instructed our chairman, draft a letter and send it back, yes, we will do an internal investigation, or no, we're unable and unwilling, as it says in statute. That's in statute, and statute supersedes school board policy. So that's why we're here today, to decide, do we want them to do the additional? It's not the merits of the report that we're here to discuss.
well, can I,
We already said that their report finds it's unfounded.
there's one more important point that everybody needs to understand. Until the IG concludes its investigation, the report is confidential and it cannot be disclosed. The investigating, the witnesses, it cannot be disclosed to third parties until the IG says it's done. So while our investigators has completed, it can't be submitted out and gone out to the press. It's not subject to Chapter 119 demand. It is actually technically confidential, and the names and dates and people shouldn't be released to the public until the IG has said the investigation is done. Because until the IG says the investigation is done, it's not done, not subject to Chapter 119.
Well, then the suggestion that you made about submitting the report to the IG with the letter from us, or from the superintendent, you had suggested that the superintendent send the letter.
And then any individual has the ability of saying, I know this came up, this is concerns I have about the investigation, but you can't, I'm talking about third parties, I'm talking
Right,
about a teacher, I'm talking about union, I'm talking about anybody has the right, under the law, to be able to express freedom of speech. They have these concerns, and they say, here's the report you just received, I don't know what it says, but this is where I think it's missing. But if the report goes out to third parties outside, then the law is violated. Because under Chapter 119, until the investigation is complete, it cannot be released, because
So in relationship to what we're talking about for the school board meeting, then, you're saying that we should not be discussing this at a school board meeting?
No, I'm
Because
saying that you should not
that
be,
would then-
you can discuss what you want to go in
discuss
letter,
No, not the
but
content,
but you
I
can't
understand
release the
that.
content to the
Right,
public
right.
until the IG says
Right.
it's done. Because even if we send it to them now, okay, without the board expressing their concerns, it isn't over until the IG says it's over, and it has never been until the IG says it's over.
So I just want to go back to what you just said, because if I heard you correctly, you're still saying you want to send a letter saying, we want you to set aside this investigation and do your own complete investigation.
No, that's not what I said. I was saying,
No.
that's how this came about, because it
Right,
should have
okay.
come to us first. I agree with Mr. Sykes, that this report has to go in, and I agree with Mrs. Studdard, let's attach a letter from us as the board that we would like additional review done. I agree with that. And then if they find there's nothing, then we know we have a clear conscience and we've cleared the good name of Clay County School District. But I think at this point, to close the book, like Ms. Studdard said, and bury our head in the sand and say, well, they found nothing, there's nothing there, when we're still getting phone calls from people, I think we've got a black mark on our district.
I think in addition, since this is public and will be viewed, I would encourage anyone who has information, any of our staff or any parents or anyone who has information to go ahead and write a letter directly to the Inspector General's office and tell them in that letter what they know. Because
with you.
that would alleviate the intimidation factor. If they're writing a separate letter that we don't know anything about, because everything that we have is public.
Right.
So that if they send it to us or if they tell us, it's public
Right.
knowledge. But if they send it privately, they can remain, for lack of a better term, anonymous. It's not really anonymous because the Inspector General's office will
Right.
know who they are. But if they have information leading to that kind of thing, outside of the intimidation thing, the criminal
That would
kind of
take it out of the
side.
intimidation.
Right.
thing,
Right.
yes.
So they could, I would encourage anyone that has that kind of information certainly to go ahead and send that on their own. And I would hope they would have, maybe before, but if we haven't said it, go ahead and send it, please.
Send it now. So I guess the question would be, anybody who comes forward at this point, is this board going to offer whistleblower protection under whatever the state?
It doesn't matter whether the board authorizes it, the law allows it.
It does.
If somebody makes a complaint, the law, Whistleblower Act is not given or withdrawn by board
So
action.
it's not anything we have to do?
No, you have no control over that.
All right.
I mean, that's the law. The Whistleblower Act, if you file a complaint under the Whistleblower Act, you're covered by Whistleblower Act. Yeah, I've dealt with it, I've litigated Whistleblower Act.
So I guess we want people to know that by coming forward, their jobs are not at risk. They, will be able to tell their story, and Mr. Davis is not gonna walk in and fire them. So, all right, so, we need a motion and a second on drafting a letter, or is it just general consensus?
I'll make a motion,
Motion.
if you want a motion
All right.
to draft a letter and bring it to the board.
I'll put it on the
next week,
agenda for
and on the
next.
agen- Put an agenda item on,
Mhm.
got a letter, and then you can draft a letter, and we can look at it next week.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right,
Discussion?
discussion?
In the letter,
Mhm.
I need clarification. Are we listing names of people
No.
per se?
No.
We're just saying,
Just
perfect, that's all I wanted.
additional
Got
information
it.
kind of
Thank you.
thing.
Thank you.
I
We're
think
not-
if we
we're-
listed
it's
names, it
Betsy-
would be directing the
Yeah,
investigation.
well, and we don't
Yes.
wanna do that, and
Correct.
as you
Right.
said, Ms. Condon, I mean, if we send names, it looks like we're trying to do the investigation.
Correct.
I don't want that job, you don't want that job, we're just saying,
I just heard a couple of different things, and I wanted to
Okay.
be sure that we were on the right
Yeah.
track with the letter.
I
Thank
mean,
you.
you can't be too specific
No.
on it, but,
No,
just to give them the idea that
There may
they
be
wanna
more
talk to
coming
some
in.
more
There you
people.
go.
Yeah.
All right,
That's
I have a
basically-
motion from Mrs. Studdard on drafting a letter that we will send to the Office of Inspector General with the report. A second from Mrs. Bola.
No,
I'm
Ms.
sorry, a
Hutchins.
second from Ms. Hutchins.
Gil Housen.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
You were both
Okay.
together last night, sorry.
Any further discussion?
I've been at Hutchins longer than I
Yeah,
know.
really.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Mr. Superintendent, was there anything you wanted to add for this meeting?
No, ma'am, I think it's a solid solution. It gets to a point where we're able to take a report that was created and crafted and at the same time give a voice to the board for direction. It allows us to continue to unturn any leak that potentially may be out there. And from my side, I'm ready to move forward, but also to better understand if there's any processes or systems internally that we need to identify in order to change. And, the good thing is this is the first leg has been complete, and if a second tier is to come through, we'll be open to any feedback we can about this, about our organization, about our department. So, but, excited to learn if there's something that we need to do differently in order to move forward.
All right, thank you. Any presentation from the audience? Is there anybody who'd like to speak?
I have a question. I thank you, Betsy, for offering that to employees, because I know that our members are going to want to hear that. What I have for, I think Mr. Sykes might be able to answer, if they did participate and give statements, how can they be assured that what the report reflects was what they actually stated? If they're a participant in the investigation, Mr. Sykes, are they entitled to see that report?
No, and that's if they have concerns, I would recommend they send a letter saying, I'm afraid they didn't get this or that, okay? But they don't, you don't give the witnesses the opportunity to change the investigation. They don't do that. Nobody does that. I mean, I don't know anybody that's ever done that. And the issue came up about the applicability of the Whistleblower Act. Let me read it to you so you know it, and I'll give it to you. Because it's under 112.3187, and let me make sure everybody understands how broad this is. Subparagraph 7. This section protects employees and persons who disclose information on their own initiative in a written signed complaint, semicolon, who are requested to participate in an investigation, hearing, or other inquiry conducted by an agency or federal government entity, semicolon, who refuse to participate in any adverse action prohibited by this section, semicolon, who initiate a complaint through the whistleblower's hotline or the hotline of the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit of the Department of Legal Affairs, semicolon, or employees who file any written complaint to the supervisor officials or employees or who submit a complaint to the Chief Inspector General for the state of Florida, comma, to the employee designated as an agency inspector under that section, I'm not going to quote it, or to the Florida Commission on Human Relations. The provision of this section may not be used by a person while he or she is in care, custody, control of state DOC. You don't care about that. But basically, it's not granted or withdrawn by the board. It's automatic for every employee. And what happens then is if an employee believes that they are being punished in violation of whistleblower, it authorizes them to seek remedies with the state. They can file private action, they can file suit for damages, or they can get relief from the state government. But it isn't something that's given or retracted by the board.
Thank you for explaining that.
Is it public comments?
Yes.
Ms.
Excuse me, Teresa Stepsinski, Florida Times Union newspaper. On behalf of the Times Union, I would formally request a copy of the report that you have received so far, as well as a copy of the letter that you are drafting for as soon as possible. Respectfully, we disagree with Mr. Sykes. Again, respectfully, we believe that it is a public record since it has been forwarded and received by the district and its officials.
But
Thank you.
Can I ask? Yes, sir, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Sykes, and that was a question I was going to ask right before. Is there, are we obligated to submit immediately due to the fact that we are now recipients from the investigator? If we are, is there a timeline for release or is it immediate?
If the board determines the investigation is complete, then you immediately release it. If the board believes there's more investigations to be followed up, then the investigation is not complete, and IG makes the determination that further investigation is required. The whole point under Chapter 119 is that while the investigation is going on, Carl, jump in if you disagree, because he's this SME on Chapter 119 law. If the investigation is still ongoing, it is not subject to disclosure until it's been completed. So if the board says investigation is complete, they can really, by doing that, it's automatically subject to release right now. But if we're sending the IG saying we want further inquiry done on it, investigation is not complete, and it's not subject to public disclosure.
Madam Chair, can I ask Mr. Sykes a question?
Yes.
So, could we, when we first got the original complaint that listed employees in there, one of the opinions you had given us was that had we redacted the names, that we immediately could have within our.
Had you redacted the name properly?
Right.
But
So my question is, could we release the report redacted with names until the investigation is complete, and then upon completion, really
So long
said
as we
not to
redact it in
redact
such a fashion that the report can't be used to go back to any particular person. In other words, you're not just, if you say, you redact out the name principal of such and such high school, then you have to do sufficient redacting of the information that you can't look at it in any way, shape, or form, go to that person. So I think if you did that kind of redaction, it's possible.
Mr. Sykes, it was my understanding from your comments earlier that the Inspector General's office has to close out the investigation. The board can't do that.
Well, see, the thing of it is, I do agree with that. And I think that we send it to them, but, I mean, if the board wants to say, as far as we're concerned, it's closed out, I don't think we have really the authority to do that. I think the IG makes it.
Right. We
But if the
didn't
board
start the
wants to release it,
investigation.
we can say, it's done from our perspective. I don't think that's the right way to do it. I think the IG makes the final determination whether the inspection is complete.
Okay, thank you.
Can I speak?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Ms. Renally Paiva.
I'm sorry, Renly Paiva, president of the CCEA. We actually try to do the whistleblower with the IG, with the Inspector General, and we were told we're not eligible. So we're told we're not eligible because under school district employees are not state employees. Oh, I'm sorry, the statute is 112.31878B.
Prin 8, Prin B.
Prin 8, Prin B, identifies a school district as a local government authority for purposes of determining the remedies of violation to the Whistleblowers Act. PERC does not have jurisdiction over this matters. And it says it has 2 case studies, Leo versus Sarasota Classified Teachers Association, 39 FPER 64, and Dyer versus Hillsborough Community College, 39-308. School district employees are not state employees, therefore the provisions of section 112.31895 Prem 4 Prem A Florida statutes, which provides for filing with PERC after receipt of a notice of a termination of investigation by the Florida Commissioner on Human Relations, do not apply to the complaints against a school district. Instead, school district employees must file Whistleblowers Act complaint with the appropriate local governmental authority.
Yeah, okay, but the thing about it is
Hold
that,
on, I'm just not finished. If such an authority does not exist, the school district employee may bring a civil action in any court of competent jurisdiction, and it lists the 2 case studies. We actually had the IG come to us because we were trying to seek for our employees whistleblower protection, and we were told we could not. They do not fall under the Whistleblowers Act. So unless we got the wrong information, and we did have the IG there in our building, and that was the 2 case studies that they referred us to, because we did go back and forth, and that's why Dr. Saylor had to have a private counsel. She didn't even have us as her lawyer, because we had no jurisdiction.
but the point that I think you need to understand is that every employee has the ability to sue the school board and has, the whistleblower provides relief. It doesn't provide the PERC avenue relief, it provides a different avenue relief. So everybody still has the relief.
It said we don't, I thought she said that the teachers don't fall under the whistleblower.
For
Is that
PERC.
what she said?
For purposes of PERC.
All right,
That would not
so how would they be protected, Mr. Sykes?
They can file a civil private action, they can bring a complaint to the board. Those are the 2 methods.
That's correct.
The
That's what I
other,
said.
the other way
It
that
has
you
to
can
be civilly
potentially
done.
do this, if you want to staff up and have a modification of our policy to incorporate a whistleblower act provision in the school board policy, you can do that too. But right now, as it stands right now, you don't have the ability to go through PERC as an employee, as a member of the school board, but you do have the ability to file civil action and get attorney fees and costs if you prove your case.
But I feel like I took it wrong, what you said. I thought you said that they were protected by whistleblowers.
They are
That's the way it came
They
across.
are,
not
just
according
not
to
through,
that.
So,
not
no.
through that one avenue, but they are, they could bring a civil action against the school district, and if it was proven in their favor, they can get attorney's fees and
Yes,
costs.
ma'am. They have to do it themselves. They
Yes.
have to civilly do it, and that's the problem. Our people don't have money to civilly do anything, and their teachers are not apt to go to court on their own anyway, and nor would I ever suggest that they do, because most of them are AC now. So I, as a president of a union, would never encourage them to put themselves out there, unless, what Mr. Seitz just said is an interesting prospect, unless this board does incorporate some policies to protect people from coming forward.
So, and I will say as superintendent, I have no problem working with the board if that's our wish and aspiration to create this policy. As superintendent, we will protect anyone that wants to have conversations about wrongdoings in this organization at any point in time.
And one more public comment.
Yes, Michael Carrigas, I'm an attorney in town. I'm not your attorney, obviously, for the record, but I just want to go on record as saying you guys are receiving basically awful legal counsel from your attorney here and being steered in exactly the wrong direction. Chapter 119 with regard to confidentiality, you guys are simply a cog in the wheel when it comes to this investigation. This is being handled by the OIG in Tallahassee. You don't have the authority to set the rules for what you do with this investigation. You're simply given the opportunity to respond. You have 30 days, but you guys are now almost 120 days over that. You have the opportunity to draft a report, send it back for their review. They then make the determination if you've done a good job, if they're going to handle the report, if they're going to continue, if they're not going to do that. This report from the beginning was handled in the wrong hands. It should not have been anything handled by you guys or by the district. And to counter what Ms. Gilhousen and Ms. Condon both said, your chairman previously has sent multiple letters to the state and engaged in dialogue with the state, and this board had no knowledge of it, nor did you vote on the content of that letter. So I find it interesting that now you guys want to go that approach and discuss the letter in the open, potentially in violation of the sunshine. With regard to the whistleblower protection, your HR department, I think, is unaware of the fact that it's already in your policy. You can pull up school board policy. You already have it in there that the board may authorize whistleblower protection. As Ms. Paiva said over here, they do not fall under the State Whistleblower Act. It's incumbent upon you as a school board to extend whistleblower protection to any employee who comes forward and says, hey, I have an issue, I have a problem. And Ms. Condon, the concept of putting the burden on your employee to sue you, to come forward, to get an attorney and to sue you, is simply unbelievable. If you have an employee who wants to come forward, it could be someone at any level of administration or a staff member. You're talking about a bus driver or a janitor who's making minimum wage, and you want to put the burden on them to go out and get an attorney and to sue you to simply try and get whistleblower protection. The way it should be handled and the way it is handled across the state is school boards have the authority to say, if you come forward, you'll be given whistleblower protection and we will protect you so you can tell us what you know. How is anybody supposed to ever feel comfortable reporting a boss, a supervisor, a school board member, a superintendent, if they have that burden on them and then have to know that, man, if I don't win, if I don't get an attorney, if I don't get a judge who rules in my favor, now I've just put it out there that my boss is doing something wrong and forever will have a target on your back because the majority of your employees don't have job security in this county.
Where did you say it's something in our policy?
You have in your HR policy a section there, and I don't remember the
Where-
exact
where
numbers,
is
but
it,
a couple
Mr.
weeks ago,
No,
there's
I
a
have
section
to
in
read
there,
the
and there is a
policies.
sentence that said employees may be authorized to have whistleblower protection.
Really?
Who do you think authorizes?
I wonder where
The
that
school
is,
board.
do you know where
It's
that is?
2.53.
Jeremy.
There is no specific whistleblower provision that I'm aware of in the school board policies that sets forth the relief provisions.
Excuse me,
Just a
excuse
minute.
me.
Jeremy,
Jeremy, would you
The
state
only
that?
time I can find in reference, not to say that we're fully archived yet, the word whistleblower in our policy is HR 2.35D.
And to be clear, you do not have an
What does that say?
expanded whistleblower policy like PERC offers specific benefits, it offers specific features and offenses the person has. Yours is not that in-depth because your policy is awful and has not been reviewed like it should have been over the last 20 years. That being said, the word whistleblower is in there and says the board may authorize whistleblower protection. Now you can turn a blind eye and say, hey, you know what? Employees, bus driver, janitor, teacher, go out and get an attorney and sue us if you want to try. Why would you work and have that relationship with your employees? That's the exact problem in this district.
That's why you need to staff this up and have a proper whistleblower policy procedures, that's what you want.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Stutter?
If the policy says we can offer whistleblower protection and it's already there,
I have to go back to it and look
We
at
can. It doesn't say that
2.35D
we
to see
are.
if it's really
a
explicit
difference
and
in the-
identifies and covers all employees.
Individuals who comply with the requirements for whistleblower protection under the state law who report alleged fraud or fraudulent, and it goes on for a little bit there, but that is the only place I can find the word whistleblower in our policies.
And this highlights the exact reason why your previous board chairman did not want this issue to ever come before your board and be
Madam Chair.
discussed.
Just one moment, yes.
I just wanted to clarify, I believe my comments were misconstrued. I don't think at all that our employees should have to bear any burden on themselves. I was merely trying to clarify between Ms. Paiva and Mr. Sykes' comments. Further beyond that, I never said publicly that I agreed with the choice that Mrs. McKinnon made about drafting that letter. And in fact, I spoke from my comments as a board member that I wanted us to make sure that we were doing things correctly going forward. I
You did.
agreed with you,
Yes.
Mrs. Karakis,
Thank
on
you.
that that she did not act on our behalf, and that as the state statutes clearly identify with school boards, is that we act as one board. And so I was only, I do believe we need to do the right thing going forward. And what has happened in the past, we can't go back and change, but we can go forward.
But look at how nice this board is doing. I mean, we're having a great conversation, even though it's a touchy subject, and we're handling it all really well, so thank you for that.
I'd like to clarify my comments as well. I never referred to Ms. McKinnon in any of my comments or any letters she ever wrote on behalf of the board. I agree with all of you that we act as one body, that there's no going rogue here. So that was I second your motion that we should bring the letter to the board.
I noticed that, good
Thank
point.
you.
I just want you guys to understand, I'm not,
And I don't feel that way at all. And just want to say thank you, because I'm glad we discussed it cordially and respectfully, and I see just good things in our future. Is there any school board requests? Anybody have anything they want to say before we adjourn this meeting and move into our workshop? All right, with that, Mr. Hendricks, you had
Just wanted
something?
to clarify on chapter 119, as the record liaison officer for the district, one of my responsibilities is public records request, which is governed by chapter 119. When we are in custody of either confidential or sensitive data, we have that responsibility not to release that information. If we become aware of an investigation, for example with law enforcement, even though we may feel comfortable releasing that information, it's always our practice to contact the investigating agency to ask permission for releasing confidential data.
Okay.
So that's
thank
what I
you.
would recommend. We would contact the Office of Inspector.
I would like you to do that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I'll do it today.
And send an email to the board letting us know the response.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. All right, with that, we're adjourned.